My lords and ladies, welcome. Thank you all for being here. Of course, we're all here to talk about Rob Zombie's proposed remake of The Wizard of Oz, which he's chosen to title Dorothy, She-Wolf of Munchkinland. I don't know if is that why we're here? That's not why we're here, is it? No, this panel is about...
I was handed like $4 and told, hey, there's like a place back there. You might want to go check it out. And I was like, cool.
Then you're in the right place.
And then I was told to sit.
Well done. You're in the right place.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
This is about horror podcasting, horror journalism, how to break into it, and for the love of Karloff, is there any money in it? And want to introduce our panelists. On the far end there is Jimmy Wienholz, independent filmmaker, owner, CEO, and founder of the Horrific Network podcast. Absolutely. Let's hear it for him. Next to him, Michelle Nisk, independent filmmaker, star of Horrors of the PNW, and owner of the online magazine, The Bloodshed.
Hi.
And next to me, the man whose idea this panel was, Joshua Millican, contributor to Scream Magazine and staff writer for the online magazine, Dread Central. Let's hear it for him. And Joshua, kick it off for us. You've obviously got a lot of experience in this field, having done what you've done in the field. What are some of the pitfalls you can help the people in this audience jump over with your knowledge?
Yeah, there are pitfalls, which is pretty much kind of my personal inspiration for coming out and doing this, because there's no guidebook, so no one's gonna tell you specifically what to look out for. And there are some things that I did that actually turned out to be making hurdles for myself. I made my own hurdles unnecessarily. I mean, there's a lot of success involved. In 2011, I started my first blog just as basically an online diary to talk about movies that I had seen, and I was getting, more and more reads, and then I started, getting offers for writing gigs, and now like he said, I write for Dread Central, which everyone knows about, Scream, which has excellent name recognition. For 2.5 years, I was the daily news writer for Horror Freak News. Some of the highlights were getting to cover the South by Southwest Festival earlier this year. I got to see the world premiere of A Quiet Place. I got to see Hereditary before all the rest of you. I just got back from E3, where we got to all kinds of parties and get free tattoos. And so there's a lot of fun to be had. That said, oh man, I had some low points. And during one of the low points, what I thought I'd do was kind of like create a code of conduct. And it was as much for like my own protection as anything else, and it was almost like I wish other people would abide by this too, because it would be so much easier. So I'm going to just go through the Horror Bloggers Code of Conduct, and if I have time during this introductory period, I'll elaborate a bit. If not, we can save some of that for Q&A. So the Horror Bloggers Code of Conduct, I'm actually going to read you the preface. When I began blogging years ago, I felt it was part of my duty to keep other sites and writers in line, calling out examples of inaccurate or misleading reporting, shaming death porn or clickbait, and holding the community to the high standard I set for myself. I've learned the hard way that this was wrong. These actions, in fact, detract from the true purpose of writing, the true purpose of a writer, which is to write. Those who are serious about the craft should turn their critical eye inward only. Those of us who are lucky enough to reach an audience should focus on providing the best experience possible, which never includes telling them who to disdain. This is a code of conduct I abide by. It is not the horror blogger's job to expose, shame, or call out another site or writer's perceived shortcoming. The horror blogger's job is to produce accurate, interesting content with a unique spin. Next point, plagiarism is a crime and a career-ending offense. To that end, accusing another site or writer of plagiarism in any case other than a word-for-word copy or a blatantly unoriginal reimagining is reckless on your part, irresponsible on your part, and libelous on your part. legal channels are very available, and there's no need to publicly name anyone who has potentially plagiarized your material. Finally, or nearing the end, never condone cyberbullying in any way, shape, or form. Don't be manipulative about it. Don't, tacitly encourage your followers to speak out if they hate so-and-so as much as you. Encourage the success of your colleagues and ignore the haters. Let your work speak for itself. It should never be measured up against the shortcomings of others. And love horror or just don't do it at all. So can you make a living at horror? It's complicated, and it's a glass half full kind of thing. And the answer either starts with no, but, or yes, if. So can you make a living as a horror blogger? No, but you get a lot of perks like free travel and experiences of a lifetime, and if it's great. Can you make a living as a horror blogger? Yes, if you don't have a family, and if you're able to live communally like I do, and you're able to live basically what amounts to a minimum wage lifestyle for the perks. And I am a freelance writer, so this is my angle. The other members of the panel have different positions and different angles and different stories to tell, so I think that wraps that
And
up.
above all, like you said, if you're willing to live minimum wage lifestyle, live communally, it all goes back to loving the genre. It all goes back to you're doing it for the love of the genre, not because you hate a certain site, hate a certain style of horror blogging or journalism, it's because you love what you're doing and you're doing it in service of the genre.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Michelle, let's talk a little bit about what you've been doing and your philosophy of horror blogging.
Hello.
Oh,
Ooh.
nice.
Okay. Hi. Okay, so I am the owner of the horror publication, The Bloodshed. What we do is we feature indie artists who work on horror games, different genres of music, and of course film. And the whole point of our publication is to bring light to creatives that otherwise wouldn't get that chance to have a spotlight, and so you can click on that and, hey, you just learned that, Joe Smith in Indiana is making an incredible film with John Lizardo, so it's pretty cool. Otherwise, I am a filmmaker. I am the owner and creator of Horrors of the PNW, which plays annually at Crypticon Seattle. Through that, we also utilize services of The Bloodshed, where we pick up different independent artists who have an aspiring script, but no budget to make their film. So what we do is we help them in a step-by-step process learn how to write, film, and create and push out their first film. What would normally cost them about 20 grand, we take them and we walk them through the process so they understand. And if they want to down the line, they are better equipped to go guerrilla filming in their backyard with a DSLR, and they can rock it out. So everything that I do in particular is because I am a little bug. I'm just a little indie artist. But there are advantages that I have that, I would have loved to have had back in the day. And so the whole point of it is to be able to bring other aspiring artists to a point where they can realize their dreams. And then, sometimes, they're like, that was amazing, I'm glad I got to do it, but I never want to do it again, fuck this. And please excuse the F-bombs, they happen. And then other times they're like, I've tasted blood and I want more. So it's really enriching. There is absolutely no financial gain whatsoever in the way that I do it. It's all cost. But it's cost for love, it's cost for passion, and it's cost because there's something so satisfying about being able to help other people realize their dreams, and in the process be able to accomplish your dreams as well. It's mutually beneficiary, and so that's me, that's what I do. Hi, I love you. Okay, now you now.
to be helping the next generation of great horror filmmakers and horror stars getting their start. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. And Jimmy Wienholz.
Yeah, so I'm Jimmy. I started a podcasting channel. It started out as the Horrific Podcast, and it was a time where I didn't have a whole lot going on positive in my life, and I needed kind of an outlet to kind of turn things around. And my buddy in the back there, in the very stylish show. So look at these shirts real quick. So Ornco, does anybody know what Ornco's from? Nobody. Well, it's the trucking company from Pet Cemetery.
Oh, very nice.
They don't stop or they don't let cats or kids delay their package delivery. But no, my buddy in the back and I, he had moved out to Sacramento, ironically, to go to law school, and it was a reason for us to keep in touch. And so we started a show, called it the Horrific Podcast, and the premise was we were going to watch one of the lowest Rotten Tomato horror films a week, and then review it, and talk about whether or not we actually loved it, and the score was unjustified, or if it truly was painful to get through. And we did that for a while, and probably 6 months in, I had this couple from Canada write this page on Twitter, and they were like, I want to send you a copy of my book and then come on your show. Is that doable? I was like, absolutely. First of all, I was stoked that someone in Canada was listening to my show. So I was convinced all the plays were just me hitting it again and again. And then it just snowballed. Like, podcasting, like, we knew going in, there's like no way you're gonna make a living doing it unless you're, Joe Rogan or the dude who hosts The Talking Dead. What's his name? Chris Hardwick. Someone like that, where you've already have national attention on you anyway. But the one thing that I wanted to do is do something that I hadn't seen hundreds of podcasts of, because you can do Disney on Apple Podcasts and you get dozens of selections. You can't really do that for a horror podcast that is putting content out on the regular. So that's how we made that decision. And after those two authors came on, it really did snowball. It was independent horror film directors like Michelle that I would connect with through social media, and everyone. Josh talking about perks and getting cool stuff. The independent community is very much like, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, and then we'll scratch together. So check out my movie for free. Please review it. If you have time, let me on your podcast and we can talk about it together. And so it really is a win-win situation, because you're getting new content, which, by the way, the independent horror scene, although Heredity was mind-blowing, but the independent horror scene is so much more creative than the mainstream horror scene. Lately, I would say mainstream horror is really stepping the game up, and we're not seeing sequel after sequel after sequel to the well is run dry. We're seeing more ideas come to the mainstream and making it way more easy to watch, which is awesome. But those people that are here at Sinister CreatureCon, guests and stuff, they really are the nicest people. He could be Jason on the screen, but he's like a huge teddy bear in person. And so they're happy to help you. And they're even happier to help you if you're happy to help them. And then from there, I made a film, and I made it on a whole lot of volunteer hours, and it was a huge project. I had zero experience, had to learn how to work a DSLR, no idea. And we got it done, and the goal was, if we could just get it into one festival, it would be a success. And that actually led me into these two, because the Bloodshed, Josh was at the premiere of it at my hometown, and he was covering it for the Bloodshed, which Michelle owns, so like small world. And we were stoked. It got into some festivals like all the way in Italy, and it's won a few awards. And so, but now the most important thing, it got me into film school. So hopefully down the road, once that's done, I will be able to make a living and be an advocate for not having something handed to you and just following your dreams. I'm a huge Walt Disney fan, and he says the biggest thing to overcome in achieving your dreams is to take the first step in achieving your dreams. And one of the biggest crimes is that everyone has this passion that we all want to do, but we all kind of get into the routine of, well, I've got this 9 to 5, or, you know, I'm married and, you know, I have 2 kids that I have to provide for. Like, life gets in the way, and it's totally understandable. But if you can take your first step towards your dream, at least you have the mind frame of knowing that you took that first step, no matter how it works out.
Absolutely. And by the way, I just got to quickly second what you said about independent horror films being where the real creativity is. By the way, I don't think I introduced myself. I'm Lord Blooddraw. I host Lord Bloodraw's Nerve-Wracking Theater. I'm a horror host. I host old horror and science fiction films, but also I do a lot of live presentations, and for years I hosted the Drunken Zombie International Horror Film Festival in Peoria, Illinois. And unfortunately, that particular festival is not running anymore, but I looked forward to it every single year because you were guaranteed to see things that you weren't going to see anywhere else, to see ideas you weren't going to see in horror anywhere else. Granted, you know, low budget, acting maybe not that great, effects maybe not that great, but you're getting great ideas and great creativity. And I think that the reason why horror seems to be on the uptick now is because Hollywood looked at independent horror and realized that they were just turning out the same old bland, you know, sequels and same old ideas, and now you've got more creative films coming out.
Yeah.
And I think that's why. I think that independent horror has really affected mainstream horror now. And speaking of that now, you have, working on making a film, Jimmy, you have been a performer in front of the camera for a while, Michelle. Joshua, have you ever been interested in either making a film, making an independent film, or performing in front of, being in front of the camera or behind the camera?
You know, I wouldn't mind being in front of the camera as something of a horror correspondent. Before Winchester was released, the movie with Helen Mirren, I live really close to the real Winchester Mystery House, and this is another thing, talk about perks. So, you know, since I live so close, I had my editor call the Winchester house and they said, hey, we want to do a after hours sort of thing, and they were really like open to it. So I actually got to go to Winchester Mystery House after hours, and what I did was I actually invited 4 different like mediums and empaths and stuff, and we had an on-site historian, and it was awesome. Like, you know, you've been to the Winchester Mystery House, but they were like moving the velvet ropes and letting us like go in, and we filmed the whole thing, and it was a little you know, it was Dread Central's way of promoting Winchester's release, and we, you know, cut it with the trailer and stuff like that. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with that, and I'd love to do a series called High on Horror, where I smoke weed with, you know, horror directors and actors, and we watch scary movies, and, you know, I mean, you guys would watch that, right?
I would watch that, absolutely.
So, you know,
yes.
But you know, I'm a writer first and foremost.
Okay.
So, you know, I wouldn't pass up one of those opportunities though.
So tell us a little bit about, I mean, I'm much older than you guys. So tell us a little bit about the horror films that you saw as you were growing up that really inspired you to want to become horror bloggers, horror journalists, or horror performers, or horror filmmakers. Halloween?
Yeah, Carpenters.
Sure.
Pet Cemetery.
Right.
That's why we did the shirts. My parents made me watch Pet Cemetery week after our dog died.
Oh!
And
Oh!
my mom was reading the book and came home from school, usual shit, PB&J, homework, whatever, and she saw, oh, I got this movie to watch. What's it called? Pet Sematary. Okay. Why is it called Pet Sematary? Oh, I finished reading the book. That doesn't answer the question. Why is it?
Yeah.
And soon found out that movie messed me up for a while.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Michelle?
oh, good. I'm so excited. Okay. I actually have two particular films. The first film that I ever saw that was a horror film was when I came to the continental United States for the first time. And at the same time, it was also my first time experiencing a Christian church. My first film was Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, yes.
The original, black and white. I saw boobs, but they were dead. It was conflicting. And when I went to church for the first time, the priest, was actually exploring Book of Revelations. No fucking less. I know there was an F-bomb. And the second one is actually when I was very little, my babysitters always had this discomfort with me because my favorite book to have them read to me was William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist.
Whoa.
I was like, read this to me, and I just very much enjoyed it, So when I finally got to see the film, because it was a big deal for me, I was enthralled. And I knew that I wanted to make films. I knew that between those two movies, the rich depth of them, and then comes crashing into my world, who's that Wrecking Ball girl that I love, Miley Cyrus?
Miley, yeah.
Well, the next movie, Miley Cyrus, its way into my life, and that would be Rosemary's Baby. Okay,
Oh,
so
yes,
obviously I have a very
yes.
distinct flavor that I appreciate.
Yeah.
There's points, no matter how far you get, you know what I mean, there's always a situation of as grandiose, what is it, the greatest plans of my cement off the gate
Oh, yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Best laid plans. There we go.
Best laid
Yes. So, you come to those moments where you're struggling with whatever your dream is and you're trying to accomplish it. Everything, requires an ability to survive. I was very fortunate, and it was my first year coming to an event as a guest, and it was, I was a guest panelist, and it was 6 years ago, and it was at CryptoCon Seattle. And I was kind of in this weird limbo where I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this because it requires so much. It's exhausting, and friendships, relationships, you know what I mean? You have to find a way to,
Make it work.
Is it compartmentalize?
Nice.
Yes, thank you so much, thank you. And so, in the end, I ended up getting to meet and do a panel with both Barbara Steele and Eileen Dietz. Eileen Dietz
Oh, yeah.
was Captain Howdy. She was a very nice lady, and I got to gush to her. But I'm actually very shy with people. Hi, I love you. With people I'm a fan of, so I'm just like, I love you from afar. But it was so encouraging, and both of them, they were so beautiful about it that in the end, because of them, because of the films that they've done and everything, I continued being a filmmaker, and then
Right on.
yeah, I rambled a little, so I do
Right.
apologize.
What inspired you? What particular films inspired you?
Yeah, I think I kind of came at horror journalism in a roundabout way because, I loved horror movies growing up, and then I went to college and I was into drugs and music and stuff like that. But what I always was a writer, poetry and short stories and songs and, you know, spoken word pieces. So what happened was in the heyday of Netflix, when it first came out, it was awesome. It's not the same anymore. There were so many great foreign horror films on Netflix when they first came out, and I saw Martyrs and High Tension and, you know, these things, you know, and I was married at the time, and my ex-wife would never watch a horror movie under any circumstances, but I saw Martyrs, and I was just like, I told her about it, and she was just like listening with like her mouth like, and like I'm trying to explain to her how it's brutal as hell, but it's also, there's something beautiful about it, you know, because ... And she's like, you know, you should write this down, because like I would never watch that movie, but I love hearing you talk about it. And I said, okay. So I started a blog just to kind of like, hey, I saw this movie, and, you know, because anyone can start a WordPress blog, it's free, and, you know, you upload a few images and you just start doing your thing. And I had always been a writer. I got a degree in creative writing, and, you know, I took some journalism courses in junior college. So, you know, all of that sort of like started coming in handy. You know, I wasn't writing songs anymore, I wasn't writing fiction, but I was still writing what I loved, you know, which was horror movies. And it turns out I have a great memory for trivia. So, you know, all the movies I saw when I was a kid, I remember. So when I got into, you know, writing for horror websites that want like top 10 lists and best of the 80s and 90s, I still remember all that shit, and I'm still fans of all that stuff. And, you know, I collect media. I collect DVDs and Blu-ray and things like that. So, you know, I have a wonderful library that I love to revisit. But yeah, I mean, if there was one, I would have to say it was Martyrs, just because in describing it passionately, I was encouraged to write down my feelings about it. And it was the first time that I looked at journalism as something that felt good, because you're writing about something awesome.
Strange
And
spiritual aspect of that movie.
I thought so. I mean, you know, there was definitely something about, you know, Anna's final, you know, moment of peace, and just the whole idea of, you know, being obsessed with the afterlife that really resonated. And I don't think, you know, enough people got past the flaying to really, you know, even think about that. But
I would definitely consider it an existential horror.
Say it again.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I would consider it an existential horror film.
So, going along, Josh, with what one of the things you definitely wanted to drive home with this panel, what are some of the really big pitfalls in trying to launch a blog, trying to get a podcast or a website going, that people should just avoid?
yeah, I had three. The first one was, you know, I was just starting out, and, you know, this wasn't when I was doing a blog anymore. This is when I was writing for The Bloodshed, and finally I had a platform and people were reading me. And then so this blogger did what I thought was kind of like a dick move. And you'll notice, you know, rule number 1 of the horror bloggers' code of conduct is you don't call them out by name, so you're not gonna hear who this person was. But like, I thought, you know what, this guy's an asshole for the way he wrote this article. He did something insensitive, and I'm gonna call him out on it. Man, that guy had a lot of friends, and, you know,
That's one way to find out, isn't it?
yeah, I guess so. And, you know, seriously, it's 5 years later now, and he's at the top of his field, which is kind of my field too. And it's not like, you know, it's ever caused me to potentially lose an opportunity, but it sure would have been cool if I had been his friend instead of, you know. So there's really no point in that. The other real big pitfall is, you know, someone accused me of plagiarism because we both reviewed the same short film. And accusing someone of plagiarism, unless they copied and pasted your article, is bullshit, and that's on you. Don't accuse people of plagiarism because you reported it first, or because someone else wrote a review and they liked the same things you write. You don't get to do that, especially when someone's finally eking out a living, because then you're fucking with someone's money. obviously that got to me. So, if you get accused of plagiarism, log that shit, because, the people doing that can be liable if it turns out that you lose, career opportunities or, any harassment you receive. And just maybe even take Journalism 101, because, you need to kind of like understand what is or isn't okay and how to cite, and what's the difference between news and what's the difference between an original idea like a list or an editorial. Now, number 3 was I gave a platform to an anonymous source. And I had done it before. My anonymous source says, hey, Blumhouse made a new Unfriended movie and they test screened it. And I was like, oh, great. So, I published this anonymous source, and all the other big sites, pick it up and they cite me, and I'm like king of the day. And then the same anonymous source was at the Halloween test screening, and he tells me it's shitty. So I'm, Halloween's shitty. Oh my God, man. It's
I
like
remember that.
People love an anonymous source if they tell you what you want to hear, and if you don't, then it's shitty. And what made that worse was then John Carpenter goes on his Facebook and he's like, no, there was no test screening. I had already, been approached by the studio saying, there are NDA issues, we would kindly request. Knowing Journalism 101, I knew I had no problem. I didn't sign an NDA. But, being approached personally and professionally, I was like, yeah, I'll take it down. So, I took it down, but then John Carpenter's all, no, there was no test screening. And so, man, did I get annihilated on Twitter.
That hurts.
It does, because, and the thing is, people in the industry knew John Carpenter was full of shit, but horror fans, it wasn't even like he made a statement. He's all, regarding rumors of the test screening.
Yeah,
he had
it didn't happen.
posted a picture, and then in the comments, someone was like, any truth to the test screening? And he's like, no, and, people in the industry were like, yeah, no, wink, wink. But, people who didn't like the news that, maybe they were rushing it, or maybe the end, wasn't, what people wanted, and everyone freaked out, and it turned out there was a very tightly controlled narrative. But the point of the story is, when you give a platform to an anonymous source, I think I added an extra syllable there. If you give platform to an anonymous source and people don't like what that person says, even if it's true, then you take it all. And so, you might get a great story. I mean, yeah, I got to go viral. I fucked shit up. I gave this rogue screener, this platform, and it got to the highest echelons. But like, damn, did I take a beating?
Right.
And when it comes out that yes, of course there was a test screening, and yes, of course they're taking it back for reshoots. It's a very hollow vindication, because it's not like anyone's all, oh, I'm so sorry I told that guy. He should be ashamed of himself.
We apologize. We're sorry.
So, but it's also a mixed bag, because it's like, damn, did the site get a lot of hits? Damn, did we get a lot of ad revenue? But it's, you got to weigh that. And I won't give an anonymous source a platform.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Carpenter's probably gonna invite you like over for lunch.
Oh man, that guy hates my ass. Man.
Now, Michelle, same question. What would you say are the biggest pitfalls that you could avoid
Okay.
in launching a blog or a podcast or journalism?
Okay, so I can only tell it from my subjective experience. Okay. Pitfalls. Pitfalls being in the body of a woman is actually quite a bit different than being, in the body of a man and experiencing your pitfalls. When I first started writing with the bloodshed, I was called a horror nymph. I know. I was asked to supply an image of me scantily clad for the author's corner. I declined. I am a very obstinate individual. I like being that way. It's not going to change. So, there was an interesting dynamic at that publication when I first started. And as I was going, and this is, 5 years ago now, over 5 years ago, 6 years ago, about 6 years ago. And so the original owner, every time there was an article out every actress was scantily clad, if she was an icon, like a fucking legend. Instead of using a present day picture of her looking amazing, it would be an old picture of her biting a hot dog or something, you know? So it was very volatile when I first came into it. There was a moment where the owner actually, because I was one of the only women who was one of the writers, there was a moment where they started actually harassing me. And they publicly threatened me in front of a lot of people. And when, of course, my response was to be obstinate, as is my nature. And it was interesting watching the divide of people going, Michelle, you should listen to him. Okay, you know, if he wants you to not post your opinions on your own, you know, platform, then you should only echo what he wants you to do, yada, yada. I got to see the true nature of a lot of people. And then it came to the point where they could no longer manage their publication. So it was given to me, and I did not want to handle it because I didn't want people to get the wrong idea. Again, if I were a guy, nobody would have thought a single thing about it. But because I'm not, then people would have been like, oh, Michelle blackmailed the thing, you know. So I gave it to the Bloodshed's then most prestigious writer, John Lepper, okay? He actually took that site and turned it around, and he ran it solely for years. Towards the end of that, which was 3 years ago now, I ended up becoming co-owner, and then 2 years ago now, I became sole owner. I am still on very good terms with people. The original owner ended up getting their treatment. You know, there's a happy story, there's forgiveness, you know. But as a journalist, you have to have ethics. You know, you don't want, I hate to hit an old saying too often, but, you know, they say if you lie with dogs, you get fleas, you know. So if somebody is doing something that is ethically immoral, you know what I mean? You can associate with them if they change themselves. But there's also, that's going to reflect on you down the line. Years later, you could be doing a million things. There could be one person, and they're like, oh, no. That person's bad because blah, blah, blah. Association. Mm-hmm. It's extra tumultuous as a woman doing that. When a lot of the times I come into things, you know, I'm told often that there aren't a lot of women in the field, but that's actually not true. There's a lot of women in the field. It's abundant, they're brilliant, they're out there. They're making money on ad revenue. They're there, just look them up. So, you know, the pitfalls basically overall is ego. You have to be okay with the fact that you're not going to be the bright and shiny star every time you turn in an article. And you have to deal with the fact that sometimes you're going to meet people, and for whatever reason, be it sexist, racist, misogynist, you know, whatever their reason is for being the way they are, you're going to run into those sour dour types. And all you can do is accept that they exist, because you can't change them. And it's going to happen. It happens in every job, even if you're flipping burgers. It's just, that's human behavior. Mm-hmm. So mostly, if you're going to avoid pitfalls, just remind yourself why you're doing it, and really allow yourself to I don't know if forgive is the right word, but allow yourself to kind of just be like, it's inconsequential. It's kind of like other people's opinions of me actually don't matter to me, you know, and that should be the same for each of us, because perception only goes so far from an objective external point, you know, POV. I rambled a lot.
No, and especially from the point of view of a woman, yeah, that's very important.
So it's stand up for yourself.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah. Jimmy, what would you say of sort of some pitfalls that need to be?
Well, she stole one of my answers.
Oh.
The ego thing, I guess to kind of like take that and modify a little bit, never ignore anyone. when you're like trying to break in and you're making contracts, or contacts, it's that thing that just gets said to death, the Hollywood lifestyle. It's not what you know, it's who you know. It's 110% true. And you never know who knows who. For all you know, I was at a wedding. We were actually trying to make some money filming this wedding, and my friend comes up to me and, you should go say hi to that guy. And it's just some dude. Like, I'm trying to do this wedding and get some free booze. Like, I don't need to see that guy. Dude ended up being the producer of like 7 of the Saw films. And so, man, I was happy I talked to that guy.
Yeah.
But it is like the whole scratch each other's back and stuff. Like, that comes down the road. Like, I interviewed Michelle because she made a really dope movie that I can't pronounce. Unilateralis.
Unilateralis. Sorry.
Unilateralis.
Like, who knows if down the line, like, she's making some like $100 million horror film, and who knows who's attached to it with her. Like, and at the end of the day too, horror people are usually the coolest people to talk to anyway. So if someone says like, hey, what's going on, just be a freaking nice person and say, hey, what's going on back. I totally forgot what my second answer was going to be.
But that was a good one.
But no, man, just be open to it and be open to making new connections, because I remember
There you go.
all those connections led me to having the super dope job of being the panel director here. So, like, it does happen, and it can happen. You got to be able to want to work really hard. But yeah, just be thankful for what comes your way.
Okay. Well, on that, let's throw it open to the audience. Does anybody have any questions for these 3 panelists here? Yes.
When you're, you have people coming in to talk about a movie they've made that you're going to review, but you don't like the movie, how does that play out?
That's a good question. You try to be as politically correct as possible, because you have to keep in mind, like, they took the time to send it to you. So the least you could do for them is to grant them their review on your site, no matter how many hits it's going to get, and give it some time on your podcast, no matter how many listens you're going to get, because they took the time to reach out to you and let you see their film, right? So if you sit down and you watch their film and it's just like, God, this is not for me at all. I don't know if it's film school talking or if it's just like trying to be a nice person. I have a hard time not finding anything that I enjoy in some retrospect, like some part of the film. If it's a really like something I didn't like and they're coming on my show, I will end up insider tip, I end up trying to like steer the conversation as to like why they've broken the film in general. And like we compare, you know, like how he asked us like what films, why did we choose horror? I'd love asking that because everyone's answer is different. But yeah, I mean, in the review, I mean, I'm honest. I've never like said like this movie was just amazing, and meanwhile people are, you know, just crapping all over it. But I hardly would, because I know how hard it is to make a film, good or bad. Like, it's hundreds of thankless hours. So when you wrap your mind around that, having done it, it's really hard to write a bad review.
Yeah. For us at the Bloodshed, when we do film reviews, we have multiple writers on staff, and so when we get the press release with the film, like I'll watch it, or one of my lead writers will watch it, and if we don't like it, we'll pass it around to the other ones. We don't bash it, because most of us at the Bloodshed are also filmmakers, you know, so we understand. And we let it go around until there's one person, one writer that's like, I liked this, and I want to write the article. If that doesn't happen, so we give it, about at least 10 fair shakes. And if it doesn't, we also know as independent filmmakers, a bad review early in your career on a craft that you're hoping to become industrious in, no matter how well intentioned, it's hard to even get a commercial gig after that. So when that happens, I have two things that I do. We send them a response of thank you for letting us view your film. Please send us your next film when it's ready. We would love to check it out, And if they decide to get shitty about it, then what we do is we're like, would you like a critique from a Fangoria writer? And a couple of times they've said yes. And I don't think they liked it, because the Fangoria writer that we have doing like the serious critiques is like, he called my first film airy-fairy bullshit. Oh yeah, it was amazing. Like I kind of fell in like mental love with him because I was like, you just demeaned me in the best way possible. So yeah, it's visceral. His reviews are visceral, but you learn a lot. And so like he will pick it apart, and then we send that to the filmmaker, and then they have like a blueprint of where not to step next time. And his review actually helped me improve, so I like the fact that we can do that.
Yeah.
And
Learning
Joshua?
experience.
Yeah.
You guys want to hear something sad? A 1-star review will get twice the traffic of a 4-star review. And it's because people love reading people being assholes and tearing something down. And it's like these people are saying, don't be that guy, how much do you want to be in horror journalism? Do you just want to write a few things and maybe go viral on 1 or 2 articles, or do you really want to be in this? Because even when you see a movie that you're like, I normally would have turned that off in the first 20 minutes, you endured it, you find out what was really good about it, you imagine you're having a conversation with the filmmaker in public, where it's like, it's a responsibility, and like Michelle was saying, it can have a lasting impact, not even in terms of a career, but in terms of psychology, of an ability to try again, second guessing, things like that. So I would say the bottom line is, if you hate the movie, don't review it. But you got to understand why there's a market for it too. It's because 1-star reviews are titillating.
We've got to wrap up here. I think we've got time for maybe one more question. The answers are brief. Any other questions? No? Okay, I've got one. Real quick, one name answer. Your fantasy get interview, living or dead? Joshua.
David Cronenberg.
All right. Michelle.
No, he has to go first.
Oh, okay.
Damn, living or dead, huh?
Living or dead?
Honestly,
Yep.
I'm actually super stoked for tomorrow, the last panel of the day, with Victoria Price.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
I guess right now, just because the hours of I feel like cramming in college for a final, the amount of movies that you watch 2.5 weeks before this thing to just prep. And so he's really fresh in my mind, but damn, right now it'd be really cool to sit down and talk to Vincent Price about his career.
Yes, absolutely. And Michelle.
I'm so sorry. Okay. So first, I have to simplify. I'm sorry, I know you said one more. Doctor Strangelove to me is a horror film. It is absolutely a horror film. It's a satirical horror look at human behavior and war. With that answer, Peter fucking Sellers.
Oh.
My God, yes.
Yeah.
He's actually one of my idols.
Yeah.
So.
Brilliant performance. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yes.
Well, my lords and ladies, if Rob Zombie ever does get around to remaking The Wizard of Oz, you'll read about it on one of these 3 people's blogs.
I might be a munchkin.
There you go. I can see you as that. I can
Alright.
see you as that.
I hope it happens now. honestly.
I do too now. Shoot
Write
him
him
a
a
bunch of
letter.
that. That would be great. Let's hear it for Jimmy Wienholz, Michelle Ness, and Joshua Millican. I'm Lord Bloodrock. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being nice.
Thank you. It was fun. It was very fun.
Good conversation.
Thank you.
Hey, you keep your pants up. Good job.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was a good
It
conversation.
really was,
Thank you very
wasn't
much.
it?
Thank you. That was great.
'Cause I can't remember. Were you there when that incident happened?
No, that was before my time.
That was before you.
I came,
Thanks so much,
when
Jonas.
John took over.
I enjoyed that a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I very much enjoyed it.
Ooh, it's so cute. Thank you.
Not at all.
Sure. Are you ready to take a picture? Take a picture.
Like all this?
I'm gonna stand next to you.
All right.
What's up?
You want to come in? Yeah.
Go over here. Hi.
Thank you guys so much.
Now do a silly one.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you guys for coming out.
Thank you.
and
Thank
Thank you. It was
you.
a great
Thank you.
panel. I'm just starting out with, I work for an advertising agency anyway with search engine optimization and all that. And then my boss is like, you guys all need to start blogging, like this week. I'm like, okay. He's like, pick whatever you want. And I was like, okay, great, subculture. That's what I like.